Hello, my dear, beautiful family of light, my spiritual brothers and sisters out there. I am so happy to be here with you today because November has become one of my favorite times of the year because I get to interview my dear friend and spiritual brother, Gregg Braden. And we're even in the same time zone. We're probably not even 1,000 miles apart at this moment. So we have a wonderful time
Hmm.
planned for you that are listening and for us because we love to do this together. And we are really both in our wheelhouse here when we talk about these subjects that we're going to bring up. And before I start, I just want to say how much um, you are doing for the world, Greg. And I don't know when you crossed the that boundary into spirituality and science melding together. I'm sure it was a process, like life is a
Hmm.
process, but now you have so much to your credit, including being one of the most top 100 spiritually influential people in the world, probably in the galaxy. And you also just received a lovely award, a very beautiful ceremony that I
Yeah.
happened to watch from Humanity's team in 2021 for a spiritual leadership award. And you so deserve that.
Hmm.
And
Thank you.
whatever you're doing, keep bringing it because the world needs us to have these conversations and bring up these subjects and investigate. That's what I love. So, without me saying any more than that, I want to turn this over to Gregg Braden. Welcome, Greg, and thank you.
Amber, it's so good to see you, and I'm so happy to be with you and our friends today. You said we're in the same time zone, less than 1,000 miles away. My philosophy has always been once you get to Earth, it's all close. Everything's close. You just got to get here, you know. So,
I love
so
that.
yeah, but we are in the same mountain time zone today. And thank you for that beautiful introduction, a warm welcome.
Oh,
You welcomed your family. Your family is my family. And so I want to welcome everyone who's sharing a little bit of your day with us today. It means a lot. You know, I know you've got so many opportunities of where you can put your focus and your energy. And I think I speak for Amber and for all of her guests and all of our community, how much it means to us that you trust us, that you would share moments and maybe as much as an hour of your day with us today. So I just want to say thank you as we begin. And, you know, Amber, it has been a year since we had this conversation, and what a year
oh
it
my
has
gosh.
been. There's so many different directions that we can go. All of them are good. All of them are beautiful. But I'm wondering, is there something in particular that you would like to use as a way in, a launch point for this conversation
Oh,
today?
yes, yes, yes.
Good, good.
Yeah, because I always follow what you're doing. And most recently, I came across an interview uh, where you were speaking with the interviewer about your work with Nassim Haramein.
Yeah, yeah.
And I couldn't get away from it. I was glued and writing notes, and it was just really exciting. And now I know you're doing a live interview with him a week from today, next Thursday,
Yeah,
and
Thursday.
I'll be there for that. So I know it's a big and deep subject, but however we can begin that gives the viewers, our beautiful family that we share, a sort of umbrella into this research about the new human.
Wow, it is a big topic. So I'll just begin. First of all, Nassim Harman he's my dear brother, my friend. We just filmed a course together. Part of it was filmed in his lab in Southern California. Part of it was filmed on the road in Arizona. And the irony was the day that we filmed together marked the 30-year anniversary from the first day Nassim and I had ever met. And what I found, a lot of people don't know that we are dear brothers, that we work together, and that we've known one another that long, because
Mm.
although there is a place where our work overlaps, we also work in very different, seemingly different. It's all related, but
Right.
seemingly, different circles. So Nassim, I'll just give you a little history. He called me on the telephone. He was living in Canada. He called me on the telephone while he was on the road. He was already coming to see me, but he hadn't let me know that he was coming to see me in northern New Mexico. And we met at a little cafe in the town of Taos, New Mexico. And now this part of the story we remember differently. He remembers us having a few beers while we were having the conversation. I typically am a tea drinker, but there may have been some beer on the table. I don't know. But we shared a common passion in that we love this world, we love the people of this world, and we firmly believe that if we know where to look and how to look into the wisdom of the past, as well as the best science of the modern day, that there are very good solutions to ease the suffering of our global family that are already proven technologies that can be brought forth right now. And this was in the 90s when we met. So crop circles were very much in vogue. They still are. They just aren't talked about. And the sacred geometry that was showing up in the crop circles was of a special interest to him. What he didn't know is that I had just returned from a trip to Egypt. I was leading groups, one or two groups per year. One of the places we were going was the Osirian in the village of Abydos on the west bank of the Nile, where the first images of the flower of life in an archaeological setting were found. They had been found in manuscripts, certainly, and the designs of mosques and temples and things like that. But it was actually emblazoned upon the columns of this mysterious site that still scientists are not sure what the age is. So he's showing me crop circles, and I pulled out the images of the flower of life, and the two things became the foundation for the research that Nassim is doing. And the irony, before or right after, this is 2021, either before the end of this year or after the first of the year, he is going to make public a landmark seminal paper revealing the relationships, the cosmic constants that he has discovered, describing relationships from the very minute on the quantum level to the macro, to the size of galaxies. And by doing so, unifying the principles of physics that physicists have struggled with for a century. The problem has been that in physics there are four fundamental forces: the electromagnetic force, gravity, the strong and the weak nuclear forces. And some of those describe the little world, some describe the big world. They've never been able to marry these into a consistent story. Nassim has done that. And he's done it in a very unorthodox way, using geometry, and much of it is based in ancient discoveries, validated through the best science and very complex math in the modern world. Complex yet eloquent and simple. So we have this history together. The foundation of the work that we are doing now, you and I, our community, we're the product of a way of thinking that says we have been born into a universe that is dead, a dead universe made of inert material. It's not alive, it's just like rocks, flying around in space. And that within that dead universe, we as humans are the product of random genetic mutations and what's called lucky biology. So the old thinking is that we're the product of lucky physics that created just the right environment to birth the lucky biology that makes us who we are today. And that's what we're still teaching our kids in school. The problem is the new discoveries no longer support that story. And the bottom line, I'll just say it very concisely here, but this is what our work and our course that we've put together is all about, is that the new discoveries now suggest that the universe is alive, it is conscious, it is intelligent, that the universe acts as an organism. Galaxies and solar systems actually function as a living organism, so that when there's a change, if an asteroid impacts a planet, or if a star goes into melts down and becomes a supernova in a universe somewhere or a galaxy somewhere, that other parts of the solar system or the galaxy will respond and compensate as if it is a living organism to compensate for the shifts in energy. Now physicists suggest that the universe may be conscious, not just intelligent, but actually conscious beings. And the biology now has reached a point, this is just such an amazing story. The new DNA technology allows us to extract from the bone marrow of the remains of ancient beings we were told we descended from. So now we've got this technology, we can find the fossils of these ancient beings, pull out their DNA, compare it to ours, and now what the revelation is that we did not descend from those ancient forms of life. We didn't come from Neanderthal, we didn't come from Australopithecus and Lucy. We appeared mysteriously on Earth about 200,000 years ago. And the scientists agree on the date. There's no controversy about the date. The question is, how did we get here? And here's the issue. Everybody's heard of Charles Darwin. A lot of people don't, in the theory of evolution. A lot of people may not know that Darwin had other scientists, collaborators that were working with him on the theory. One of those collaborators, his name was Alfred E. Wallace. And Wallace wrote a corollary to Darwin's theory. And we know this today as a single statement that you often hear, but you may not know what it means. And the statement simply says this: nature never over-endows. Nature never over-endows. What does that mean? It means that any life form, when it acquires a new ability or a capability, it does so in response to a need in that moment in time. So for example, just a classic example, during the Industrial Revolution, tremendous amounts of soot was kicked out of the smokestacks in Europe. And that soot discolored the sides of buildings. They all became black. Well, there's a species of moths that had light-colored wings that used to blend in to the light color of the buildings so that the birds and the predators couldn't find them. When the soot covered that, those light moths stood out against the black background of the soot, and they became easy prey for the birds. And very quickly they adapted and they changed the color of their wings to blend into the soot. That's an evolutionary process. Nature never over-endows. You don't get a capability until you need it. Here's the problem. And I'm happy if I'm the first to tell everyone listening what I'm going to say. You are all over-endowed. We are all over-endowed. Yeah. Because when we showed up 200,000 years ago, we were endowed, we were imbued, Amber, with capabilities literally, I mean, light years beyond what would be needed for a human life to exist 200,000 years ago. They didn't develop these capabilities, and I'm talking about a neocortex, the brain, 50% larger than our nearest primate relative, a complex neural network made of neurons in the heart, the ability, the human abilities, uniquely human, of empathy, sympathy, compassion. Now, I'm not saying that other forms of life don't have empathy, because it's obvious they do, but here's the key. We're the only form of life, this is the uniquely human capability of accessing empathy, sympathy, compassion at will, when we choose, on demand, through what we call self-regulation of our biology. We're the only form of life that we know of today. I'm sure there are others in the galaxy. We're the only form of life that can sit down in a moment in time and say, in this moment, I choose to awaken deep states of intuition so that I can commune with the natural forces around me or commune with the organs in my body for healing. Deep states of intuition. We're the only form of life that can say in this moment, in this very moment, I choose to awaken deep states of an immune response. Who doesn't want a strong immune system in the age of COVID? And we have that capability. We have the ability to awaken our longevity enzymes at will, on demand, and so much more. Self-regulation of our biology. And we had this when we showed up. It didn't develop slowly, gradually over a long period of time, as Darwin's theory would suggest. This is what the science is showing us. And now the science has gone even further, Amber, we now can reverse engineer the DNA we have now, work backwards to see what had to happen to give us these capabilities. And this is the mind blower, because that reverse engineering is showing a fusion of specific chromosomes. It's showing the deletion or the silencing or the addition of specific genes to give us these capabilities. And it's not just in one chromosome. We're looking at chromosome 2 is the result of the fusions. Chromosome 7 is what gives us our unique capability for complex speech by connecting our tongue to the muscles in our jaw, to the part of our brain. No other primate. Okay, 75 million years. For 75 million years, the primate line of genes was stable, and no primates could create complex speech. All of a sudden, there is a little, just this little translation of DNA letters from here to there in chromosome 7, and it gave us the capability to sing. You'll never hear a chimpanzee sing Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven because they didn't have that shift. And here's the kicker. It was not a process, slow, gradual, over a long period of time. 75 million years, that line of genes was stable. And when this switch happened, guess when it was? Exactly 200,000 years ago, the same time the chromosomes were fused to give us the larger cerebral cortex and so much more. So here's the point.
What happened?
The evidence strongly suggests we are not the product of Darwin's idea of evolution. Now, I have to be really clear on this. I'm a geophysicist by degree. And I have been in the field, in my field work. I believe in evolution. I see evolution in the fossil record for plants, insects, and animals. So I'm not denying evolution as a process in biology. The evidence doesn't support it for human emergence. It breaks down when it comes to humans. And I'm not saying that we have not had some evolution in consciousness. I believe consciousness definitely is evolving from where it was 200,000 years ago. But we showed up in these extraordinary bodies with this extraordinary potential. And we're only beginning to understand. This is the next great frontier of what that means. And so the question is, how did it happen? If it's not the process of random mutations. And this is the other point. As a scientist, what I have to say is we don't know. And we will not know, and we cannot know if we keep pushing an old story based upon the false assumptions of obsolete science onto our young people and telling them this is what they have to work with. So my invitation to any educators, Darwin's theory is okay. Share that with your young people. I'm not saying throw it out, but share with them the new discoveries. Give them all the information so that young people can see. I think one of the greatest gifts we can give to young people, and I've seen this in our audiences, if you say to a young person, we already have all the answers, all you have to do is memorize what's in your textbooks, you've stifled their desire to learn.
Yeah.
If you say to a young person, the truth is, we don't know where we came from, I've seen this happen because I've taught in classrooms. What happens is their eyes light up and they say, maybe I'm the one.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm the one that can find this. Tell me more. And it's the truth. So as a scientist, what I have to say is that the evidence does not support Darwin's theory of evolution as the source of our origin. As a scientist, when we look at the genetic evidence, the physical, the fossil evidence, the archaeological evidence, which is what I'm working with Nassim on, we haven't even talked about yet, and the cultural evidence across all the indigenous traditions, at least the ones that I'm aware of in the world, we have to say that there has been some form of intervention in our past. And I think it's honest, it's fair. The problem is in the scientific community, if it's not evolution, they think, okay, it's religion. And I'm not saying that at all. Traditional science doesn't leave room for any other answers. I believe there is another answer, and intervention, a conscious and intelligent, intentional intervention underlies our capabilities and our existence.
Would you say that it might also be a invitational
Well, this is I love the way you think, because that's where I was going. Some people say we have to know where we came from to know who we are. And that could be true. But my sense is as we follow the path that the evidence has left for us, as we follow that path, it will lead to the story that tells us who we are. So by embracing the deep truth of our extraordinary potential, and let me just put it this way, there's a huge difference, Amber, between what's happening now in academia and what's possible. In academia, students are indoctrinated to force all of the new data into a pre-existing story, even if it doesn't fit. It's like a square peg in a round hole. If you pound a square peg hard enough into a round hole, you can get it into the hole, but there's always going to be spaces because square and round don't fit. If you pound hard enough, you can force with these crazy stories that they're coming up with to make the evidence fit the existing theory. There's a huge difference between doing that and allowing ourselves to follow the evidence to the story that it reveals. And that is my invitation through the books. I have a book called Human by Design. I have another, The Divine Matrix. Through all the Pure Human, the work that we're doing right now. Let's follow the story. What are we afraid of? Not you and me, but as a society, what are we afraid of? And think of the potential that this story can reveal as we learn more about who we are. And the better we know ourselves, the less we will fear the change in the new world that's emerging. The better we know ourselves, the less we fear the new human that is just busting at the seams to make the appearance. We're already here, but it's the willingness to accept this transition into a higher expression of what it means to be human. So that was a real long answer to a real short question, but I wanted to say that. No, so we could tie into all these things. So Nassim and I work on the physics. Me as a geophysicist, he is a physicist. We work on the cultural evidence. We both lead groups into some of the most ancient, remote, isolated, beautiful, pristine, mysterious archaeological spots left on the earth today. And what a lot of people don't know, and we talk about in this course, is that we are both involved in an archaeological project with artifacts. And it's not just a few artifacts. We're talking about thousands, several thousand artifacts that have now been recovered in Mesoamerican sites that depict a direct relationship between humans on Earth and a cosmic family with such accuracy. So for example, some of these artifacts are showing a solar system depicted in a way that we didn't know until the 20th century. But here's the kicker. Instead of going from Earth out to the edge of the solar system is coming from the edge in toward Earth. And it is even showing the rings on Neptune, like the rings on Saturn, that we didn't know about until the late 20th century. And these artifacts are dated to a time before traditional civilization began. So, and they are also covered with a script that is yet to be translated A lot of people don't know this. I have a background in linguistics and symbols. And so I'm working diligently in my copious spare time with a team using optical character recognition and a lot of really very cool techniques to help us to understand maybe the script gives us insight into what is being shown in the images, and if so, what will that reveal? So these are just some of the places Nassim and I are working together, and it's the foundation for the course that we're offering. I think it launches the end of this year, and through Humanities Team, people can check it out. I didn't know we were going to talk about that, but and where you and I are going with this conversation, so we can tie into this now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you said something in an interview that I was fast and furiously scribbling down, and I think this will really appeal to our audience, our people. Um, and if I didn't get all the words, please forgive me and please correct me. Um, that that we have this infinite source of energy interfacing with the field that we are. That I It sounds to
Sure.
me like we talk about the field as an out there
Yeah.
place, but it's this infinite source of energy, like you said in the beginning, that the earth is not just a rock, and it's not, not alive.
I'm going
So
to quote you on that. That's going to be a
the
T-shirt at
earth
our
is not
events.
just a
The
rock.
Earth is not just a rock.
Yeah. That'll take me to the top of the charts. And that we can, it's a living, intelligent essence.
Yeah.
And we can access the fields of human consciousness. And that's the evolution that we're looking at now. So, however you can put that into.
Sure. Well, there are a number of interviews where where we've talked about this. I think most of our community watching this, it's no big revelation to our community, but there's a field of information, a field of energy that underlies our existence. Indigenous traditions, interestingly, modern science for 300 years, science is about 300 years old. For 300 years, science has been trying to prove whether or not this field exists. And a lot of controversy around that. For 5,000 years, indigenous traditions began with the assumption that everything is connected. And rather than trying to prove the connection for 5,000 years, they explored how we can apply this connection in our lives to be healthier in our bodies and have stronger families and stronger communities and stronger societies and commune with, not pray to, but commune with forces of nature and other intelligences, interdimensional intelligences, exoplanet intelligences, by using the conduit of this field. So it's very interesting. It was in the year 2012, actually, and maybe ironically, it was on July 4th, which is the Independence Day for the United States of America. July 4th, 2012, when the laboratory in Switzerland, Geneva, the CERN superconducting supercollider, very controversial for a lot of reasons that are based on false information on the internet. I'll just say that. We don't have to get into it, but it's an amazing facility. They announced to the world that they had the first scientific proof that, in fact, this field does exist. So it is scientifically accepted now that the field is there. Here's where it gets interesting, Amber. I go to conferences, and very well-known scientists, and our community probably knows some of them, they still do this. They say, yeah, we now know there's a field out there that connects all things, and their hands do this. There's a field out there that connects all things. So they are still in the polarity and the separation from the field. Here's what the science is showing. The average human, whatever average is said to have about 50 trillion cells in the human body. Every one of those cells The average number of atoms in the cell is over 100 trillion atoms inside of each of those 50 trillion cells. And this is where it starts to get really interesting, because each of those 100 trillion atoms, it's happening this nanosecond right now. Each of those atoms is emerging from the field and collapsing into the field in this energetic dance of harmony and balance. We are constantly emerging and collapsing into the field. So it's not that the field's out there. We are the field. And consciousness, what you can think of is consciousness is creating a wrinkle or a disturbance in the field that's called the Gregg show or the Amber show or whoever is watching us. Our consciousness is coalescing the atoms for the period of our lifetime as a wrinkle in this field. And when our consciousness leaves, then our atoms return into the ordered system, not the wrinkle, not the chaos that we're creating through our bodies. But here, this is the beauty of healing, because what it says is we are not steady state beings. Whatever we are in this instant is only in this instant, and it's reflecting the consciousness that is holding the wrinkle together, or the disturbance, or my body together. And because each of those atoms is collapsing and it doesn't happen all at the same time. It's a dance. So we're talking about averages. If consciousness has an average shift in the way that we perceive ourselves, that shift is going to show up as those new atoms are coming from the field to conform to that new template. So when that's might sound complex, we're conditioned to focus on the things that we don't like. Teenagers know this. If you're going to go the night of the prom, and you go in the bathroom to get ready, and you've got a blemish front and center on the tip of your nose, that's the size of the tip of this ink pen compared to the rest of your body. But where does your attention? You don't see the rest of your body. You see that little red dot, and you think everybody else does as well. We're conditioned. We're conditioned to focus on what we believe are the flaws. But the other discovery, this might be the most powerful thing that we share today, Amber, is based on the new science. There's a very strong suggestion in science that parallels our indigenous wisdom and says that while we have been conditioned to think that our bodies can sometimes be sick and sometimes be well, that may not be accurate. What if our bodies are never sick, but our bodies simply are reflecting the conditions that they are given in a moment in time? So when we experience a rash on our bodies, rather than saying, the body's broken, which is, it destroys the confidence that we have in our bodies. Or if a doctor gives you a diagnosis that's a horrible diagnosis, which they should, in my opinion, I think they can share the information about a moment in time and say, this is in this moment, but the next moment it can change. That's not the way they typically think. But what it says is, and a way to think about this is, this is my body in the presence of these conditions. That's all it is. And if I don't like what my body is expressing, I am imbued with the ability to change the conditions. Maybe the conditions are environmental, physical environment around us. Maybe the conditions are nutritional. Maybe the conditions are based on supplements, too much or not enough of some supplement. Maybe the conditions, and the most powerful, are the emotional, psychological, mental, and spiritual environment that we create, because it is the emotional, psychological, spiritual, and the physiological environment that we create that molds those atoms as they are emerging and collapsing. I have personal experience with this. It sounds, for some people it sounds pretty woo-woo, but having spent time with indigenous families in multiple indigenous communities, from the monks and the nuns and the abbots in the highlands of central China and Tibet, and the yogis and the mystics in India and Nepal, the shamans in the Andes of southern Peru, the shamans in the Yucatan, the curanderos here in the American desert Southwest, the Bedouin traditions, the Aboriginal tradition, they all embody these principles. They don't say these words. And they're not scientists, but they understand this deep relationship. So the key, and I want to say one more thing about this, because this is such an amazing discovery. This is called epigenetics. The new science, the emerging science of epigenetics. Dr. Bruce Lipton, I know you know Bruce, you've interviewed him. He was one of the pioneers back in the 1960s. Bruce, through the universities, was writing papers about this, and they didn't like what he was writing. So he left the university. So, but here now we understand how this works. Now, I just want to share this. It's so awesomely epic and cool. Because when you say, well, you can change your DNA, you can upregulate or downregulate your DNA. And I've talked to people, especially young kids, and they say, okay, I heard the words. What does that even mean? I mean, the DNA is in the cells. How are you possibly going to influence? And people actually believe they're changing the DNA in the cells. That's not what's happening. And what I'm going to share is, it's easier. It's so cool. The DNA in our cells is surrounded, it's encapsulated by a substance that's called chromatin. And the chromatin is where the epigenetics really comes in. Because the way the chromatin wraps around the DNA, it can wrap tightly or it can wrap loosely. And the quality of that binding determines, the word is called spooling, S-P-O-O-L-I-N-G, how the DNA is able to spool or unspool. In other words, the chromatin, if it's tight or it's loose, it determines how the DNA is able to express and how the genes are able to express. And the chromatin is what responds to the changes in our environment. So this is really, really cool. Wow. So when we change our nutritional environment or the physiology through movement, Tai Chi, yoga, exercise, some kind, when we change our physical environment through good water or bad water, good air or bad air, and when we change our emotional environment. And this is why the self-help movement kind of zeroed in on the self-help of some of the emotional environment at the expense of discounting all these other factors, when in fact, we are a product of all of these factors. And they all come together under the umbrella, and this, for some people, it's going to be a new word, of what is called the Epi Genome. So we're all familiar with it. We hear the genome of the human body. Well, the Epi Genome is the umbrella under which all of these epigenetic factors fall, and we have access to the epigenome when we choose. If everything is perfect, there's no need to do anything, and if there are things we would like to change or improve upon, we now know the mechanism. Science knows the mechanism, so we know more what to do, and because it works. And then we also know some of these ideas, and you guys all know, just like I do and Amber, you do, there's some pretty wacky stuff out there on the internet, on YouTube, and it's fun sometimes to see the wacky stuff, but here's the danger. We have brothers and sisters that are in crisis. We have brothers and sisters that are hurting, that are fearful because they think their bodies are broken, and they're looking for answers, and they will go out onto the YouTube channels and they'll find wacky things and they will believe these things. And I have at least 3 friends who are no longer in this world because they pursued paths recommended on social media and YouTube that was not substantiated by anything that gave it any credence. And if you're going to follow these traditions, it's important to understand, do your due diligence. It's your body. Yeah. Do your due diligence and find out why these things work or why they may not work. Some work better than others. But this is the power of the discovery of the epigenome that is the container. You can think of it as the container for the epigenetic factors that we have access to that can shift the expression of these fundamental forces, the genes, the way the genes and the DNA in our cells are expressing. So we have that internally, and we also have through the epigenome of consciousness. So our belief system. And this is tricky because sometimes we don't know what we believe. They're subconscious. Sometimes we say one thing, but we actually harbor a deep-seated belief that doesn't support what we just said. And this is where we have to do our work. This is our, we're all doing our homework. So, but those factors are also influencing the chromatin that allows the fullest expression of the DNA in the body. And this is why the shamanic traditions sometimes are very powerful. The curanderos, using herbs and spiritual principles, Native American. This is when they work. Now we know this is why they work. So it's using the quantum principles as well as the biological principles, and it all is based on what Nassim and I talked about 30 years ago and what the science now shows. The universe is alive, conscious, intelligent, and we are the product of that living universe. So life wants to happen. In a living universe, you would expect life to happen, and I think there's a lot of life in this universe in places that we're not expecting to see it. It also means that we would never, if we are the product of some intelligent intervention, we would never be left on this world at the mercy of external events that we have no control over, that never made sense to me as a kid, and I never knew how to express it. It makes perfect sense that we are in an environment that is dynamic. It changes all the time, and that we would have the ability to compensate for those changes within us and to harmonize with those changes, and we do. So that's the bottom line of what Nassim and I are working with, and it's where my passion, that's what juices me to get out of bed every morning.
I can tell.
Yeah,
So let me ask you just this one little thing before we
sure.
run out of time here.
We won't run out of time.
Okay, good. Because time, doesn't exist anyway, right? Uh, if we,
In physics, Amber, it doesn't exist. When you go, no, seriously, when you go below a certain measurement in physics, it's called the Planck length. Time falls out of the equation below the Planck length. So it's not a universal. It's only universal from that length, the Planck
above.
length above. So what you said is exactly correct.
Oh, Max Planck.
Yeah.
So, okay, I love this concept of how we're continually folding in and out of this field of consciousness. And, I think about things like when you meet someone or you see someone you haven't seen in a long time, and your energy is interacting and you just feel great, or if something not good is happening, like somebody rear ends you and your energy starts to change in a different way and the field is all affected.
Yeah.
I totally get that, and I know how when we're conscious of it we can work with it. What I would like to ask you is that we have this major shift in so many things in the past 2 years on the planet. Everything's been touched. Everyone, everything. How does knowing what we know now about the epigenome help us navigate through however long and whatever is next, and use what we are uncovering and what you're teaching and what all of us are teaching and learning? Can we use that to help us move forward?
That's a big question to bring up at the end of our conversation,
You
and,
can have
and,
a
and it's
short answer.
no, it's a good question, and I'm going to answer it in a couple of ways. First of all, what this tells us, we are the masters of our epigenome if we choose to accept the responsibility and the power that comes with that mastery. And one of the clearest ways to demonstrate that is to open a dialogue with your cells. Every one of your cells is conscious, intelligent through the neurons in your heart. When you feel through a conscious conversation with your cells, love yourself. Tell your cells you love them. Tell your cells how much you appreciate them cooperating with one another and working together to give you the beauty and the pleasure and the joy that comes with your life. And some people laugh and they say, well, that's a crazy thing to do. Think about this. We are not really individuals. We are all communities. Bruce Lipton says this beautifully.
Yeah.
I'm a community of 50 trillion or so. I'm not that big of a man, so I might maybe 48 trillion cells. I'm a community. And if my community was not in harmony, my life would be difficult. And I've had times in my life where that has been the case. Everything I'm saying to you, I've applied in my own life. And so the simplest, once we know these connections exist, you don't have to know them. I mean, you can have the math is out there.
Yeah.
But once you know they exist, then it suddenly makes sense. Well, of course. When was the last time you talked to your cells?
Yeah.
When was the last time you thanked your bladder
Yeah.
for the
So
joy
glad it works.
that it brings into your life and the convenience and how your life would be different if it weren't, or your heart or your lungs. And in this way, love them. Say, I love you, my cells. Thank you, my cells. I love you, my cells. And you'll have a feeling in your body when you say that. And that feeling, you feel it's a warmth. It can be a tingling or vibration. And your body responds to these things. And if you have organs that are functioning in a way that's different from what your medical doctor or conventional wisdom says, please don't buy into the illusion that those organs are broken. Rarely are they broken. They are reflecting what they're being given to work with. And I know I'm the first to say I'm a scientist, and I was never taught this. It's a very different way to think. But so when you begin to think this way, you feel differently. If you say, this is me in the presence of a belief system or a nutrient or a way of eating or a way of moving or not eating or not moving or whatever it is. And if I want to change that, I can change. And you can open a dialogue with your organs, with your body, and say, what do you need from me in this moment? You can go into your heart, touch your heart center gently to bring your awareness to your heart. We have entire processes that are based upon this. I'm just doing this quickly. To the neural network of sensory neurites and neurons in your heart, and ask your heart, my heart, what does my body need from me in this moment? And you'll be amazed. There's a sensitivity that develops, if it hasn't already, and you will have very clear instructions, usually in a single phrase or a brief sentence. It's not a long, drawn out, Rarely does my heart say to me, Greg, get a pencil and paper. This is going to be a long answer. I've never heard my heart say that. But it'll say something very, very clear. And so, Amber, here's the answer to the question. The world is pushing us to embrace the deep truths of our relationship to our body and to the world around us, no longer as a passive interest, but rather as a means of survival. We have to emerge into a deeper relationship with ourselves, with our bodies, with our relationship to the world around us in realms seen and unseen, because the world is not the world that we knew only a couple of years ago. And it's not just about COVID, but COVID has been a powerful catalyst. For example, to put people in touch with their bodies. Yeah. COVID can be threatening to people who have what are called, that have comorbidities. That was a new word in the lingo. People say, well, what's that mean? And they began to find that choices that are accepted in society on a daily basis in the past suddenly became pivotal, stacking the deck one way or another for them to successfully moved through a COVID experience. And it's all the things we're talking about. It's understand, people say to me, adults, how come nobody told me this stuff? I wish I knew this stuff back in the 50s and the 60s, when I was a kid. But the point is, we know it now.
Right.
And I think this is important, rather than judge the choices that we've made as individuals in relationships or partnerships or as a society or as a nation or as a planet, rather than judge what we've done in the past, I think it's much healthier if we say we are on a learning curve. Yeah. And we made choices in the past based upon what we knew in the past. They worked because we're here. We have to say they worked because we're here right now. Now the world changed. Those choices may no longer serve us. Bless them, let them go. Because when we let them go, that's what makes room in our emotions and in our psyche to embrace the new ideas, the new ways of thinking, the new world that's emerging, and the new human that's emerging. Think about this. If you are full, if your emotions and your psyche are full of the images and the expectations of the world that you knew in 2019, and you're waiting for that world to come back, if you're filled with that, where's the room for the beautiful new world of possibilities and potential? Some we know, some we don't even know. And the new potential for you and your life, maybe what your new career is, maybe what your new relationships are, where's the room for that? I'll answer it for you right now. There isn't any, because it's all filled up with the old images that we may be clinging to. So when we mourn our past, we've all lost something.
Oh, yeah.
In this experience. We've all lost a way of life. We've all lost freedoms. Rarely are we given the opportunity to mourn what we've lost. It doesn't have to be a big outpicturing of, public display. It can simply be to yourself or to your family. Say, you know what? I miss the world that we used to have. I miss the little mom and pop shops. I miss the freedoms of travel. I miss those things. And by acknowledging it, that frees, it's the emotional lubricant that frees those ideas to move away so that we can embrace the new possibilities. And I think it's really, we don't do this as a society, but it doesn't mean we can't do it in our lives personally or in our homes or, with our families.
That's a really good point. I think that, we've gone through several different waves of feeling about COVID in the last 2 years and all the changes. And, now we know it's not going back to the way it was, and we don't even want it to. But as we look at what we did change and let go of, and, it's really good to acknowledge that, as that it makes space, like you said, it makes space for the exciting things that are to come. I think it's really great. So many things have shifted and changed.
Yeah.
And
well, it's true. And Amber, the thing is, there was a time in our recent past we could have consciously chosen to take the path of technology and healing, cooperation and peace, and move gracefully into a new world. But humans don't seem to work that way. We sometimes have to experience what we don't want before we know we don't want it. And then we say, I don't want that, I want this. So now we're in it. And the only way out of it is to go through it. And what you and I are talking about today, I believe, are the foundations of a healthy way to go through it. We're going to come through it no matter what. The question is, do we come in for a soft landing, or do we come in for something else? Do we have any landing gear at all? I don't know.
Wheels are up.
Yeah, but this is it. So we're going to go through it. So the question is, how gracefully can we emerge into the new human, the new world? How kind can we be to ourselves as we go through the changes without judging them? And how kind can we be to other people that may not be at the same place in thinking that we are? Because a lot of people, we won't. This is the nature of our species. We are not all going to make the same decisions and come to the same awareness at the same instant. It usually doesn't even happen between couples. Usually couples, one couple, one member of a
Yeah.
partnership
Yeah.
will be more of a seeker, and then will introduce new ideas, and the other partner may or may not be willing to explore those ideas. Well, that's true
Multiply
in
that times the eight.
community. Yeah, it's true in society. It's true on a national level. It's true on a global level. So I think a big part of our discipline, and it is a discipline, is to choose to be kind when people are angry or they don't understand, because the truth is they are hurt. There's a lot of hurt in our world. Rarely are people taught to deal with the hurt. So the hurt
Right.
becomes a fear, and that fear is expressed as hate. So when you see that hate, what you know is you're in the presence of someone that is hurting deeply. And if you can come from that place, it changes everything. And I think that's where the healing, a lot of the healing in the Epi Genome begins. That's a good place to come back to,
Very
right?
nice wrap up. Very, very nice.
Yeah,
No,
thank you.
thank you, Greg. This has been, as always, as it is every year, a wonderful time to spend with you. And I know that our audience will be happy and enlightened and excited about this and all the other wonderful things that you're teaching. And
Thank you.
I hope that I see you. I'm planning, I'm not even hoping, I'm planning on seeing you on January, probably January 7th, because you'll come in a day early in Boulder, Colorado at the Embassy Suites Hotel. And we're going to have a grand celebration of being back together with our friends and family after a couple of years.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years. I like the way you think, Amber, and I believe that this will happen.
Yeah,
The world's changing very, very quickly, and
yeah,
I look forward to the opportunity. It's going to be a relatively small group. It's not a cast of
yeah.
thousands, but
No, definitely not. But it's,
yeah, yeah. So,
yeah.
well, I will, in that environment, given the opportunity, I will talk about everything we're talking about right now and much
Oh,
more.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to thank,
Well,
yeah, just thank you, Amber, for your trust. And again, I want to thank our community for their trust. And I hope that something that you and I have shared today really, I mean, we covered a lot of ground, but I'm hoping that maybe there's one thing that really touched someone deeply in a way that they can think about and apply in their lives, and maybe talk to their families about over dinner.
over
And
Thanksgiving dinner.
I wasn't going to say that because I didn't know if we wanted to date this conversation, but yes,
That's
today's
okay.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Amber, thank you for sharing part of your Thanksgiving with me. That means a lot.
I am thankful that we are sharing this time together on this day. So do continue to take really good care of yourself and
I
all of your loved ones. Thank you so much, Greg.
thank you. Well, I'm thankful for you in my life and for this day, and everyone. Thank you. I look forward to our next. I look forward to seeing you in Boulder, and then this time next year. We got a date a year from now.
We have a date a year from
That's
now.
right.
All right.
All
That's
right.
so cool.